I think real estate sometimes gets a bad rep from the guys with the flashy ads that sound like get-rich-quick schemes. And hey, some of that stuff, even if it's not common, is real. Some people do quit their 9 to 5 and build an empire in just a few short years. And hey, more power to them. But maybe that's not what you're looking to do. Maybe you're just taking the first few steps, looking to add some income or build some wealth and flexibility on the side. Or maybe you are into personal finance, but just kind of skeptical of real estate in general, which is valid. And you're wanting to gather more relatable, real-life, grounded info. In this new series, I'm tapping into the wisdom of the real people in this community. People with jobs, kids, commitments, life, who treat real estate as a side quest. I've been asking them how they got started, what made it doable, whether they're deciding to scale or to exit, or just stay where they are. What are the kinds of things they wish they knew earlier? I'm not trying to convince anybody to invest in real estate. There are risks, there's a learning curve, there's capital involved. It truly is not for everybody. But hopefully throughout this series, you get to hear a variety of perspectives from folks like you and me, and those pros and cons as it relates to you will become more tangible. In this first episode, let's start from the very beginning. How do people get started, and what can we learn from their experience? First of all, let's meet a few of the investors that I had the chance to chat with. I want to thank everyone who volunteered to share their story here, and I'll leave their contact info/listing below.
My name is Jimmy. I got into real estate just by kind of accident. I'm an electrical engineer. I work for the city of Los Angeles.
I went to University of Miami. My major was business management. I grew up in Delaware and just moved up to Boston recently for work. I work for the Four Seasons company.
I'm Andrew, originally from Mexico. I've been in the States a little over 20 years now. I work for GoDaddy, one of the biggest domain registrars and hosting company. I'm a domain broker, digital assets, and I've been brokering domain names with them for about 5 years.
Beyond these few examples, I also have real-life friends who are also pharmacists, there's nurse practitioners, other corporate people whose job I can never remember, all sorts of regular folks that you probably encounter in real life who have done some sort of real estate venture on the side. Part 2, let's get more into that first deal. I wanted to know, how did they actually get into real estate and how did that first investment come about? It was fascinating to learn how they all took different paths, and we'll start with Jimmy.
I got into real estate, kind of by mistake. Was commuting to Los Angeles, which is about an hour and a half away, and it was taking a toll on me. And I kind of told my mom, I was like, I think I'm gonna buy a Sprinter van and live out of it. And she basically thought that was ridiculous and told me to buy a house, and knew I couldn't afford a house in Southern California, so I had to do some sort of house hack. I knew I had friends that also worked in LA and they were commuting also, so I had two buddies move in with me. And I knew I wanted a primary front house and a detached back house, so that's what I ended up getting. It wasn't a perfect ADU, it was registered as a den, so I ended up just doing a lot of the work myself. I added this kitchenette. Since then I've moved out from the property, and now I rent out the front and the back unit as a long-term rent.
Contrast that kind of accidental finding of house hacking, which turned into a long-term rental opportunity for a duplex, to the very intentional angle by Brugh.
I've always wanted to get invested in real estate, but every time I go to look on Zillow or Redfin or in my market, the real estate was just so expensive, and to get any sort of decent return, it would just be impossible for the numbers to ever pencil out for me. So I started looking at some different markets where cash flow was more realistic. If I'm being completely honest, the first thing that I did was go through ChatGPT and, hey, where's the best cash flowing rental markets? And that may or may not have been how I sort of stumbled upon Cincinnati. But I did my due diligence and still sort of looked at, the economy in the area, and is it the population growth and sort of the neighborhoods around it. I was kind of aiming for at least a 10% cash on cash return. And so that's how I came across this triplex I found on Zillow. Contacted my realtor, and he let me know that the property was most likely going to go for above listed value. Decided to put an offer in 10 grand above list price, and I lost it actually. I lost the deal, but it, made me realize that I was looking at good deals that other people liked and were willing to put in over list price for. That made me feel a little bit better. 2 weeks later, I guess the buyer financing or something fell through. So my agent hit me up and he was like, this property's about to go on the market again. If you want to make an offer before it comes back, now's your time. And so I hopped on it, and that's how I got here.
I thought it was really cool to hear how aware and how intentional he was even as a student. I definitely wasn't there. Andrew also had a similarly focused intent on getting into real estate as an investment, but leaned more on his existing knowledge of a specific geographical area as well as his travel experiences.
In 2020, I did a full renovation here at my current property, and that's where, I started researching a little bit more about real estate and things that you could do and whatnot. I love Airbnb, of course, and love staying at cool places, unique places when I travel, whether it be me and my girlfriend or with friends. And every time I would stay at places, I would just kind of be looking around and just not analyzing, but seeing what the host, is kind of doing. And I would love some of the things, and then some of the things I didn't really like. And that kind of started the idea of, if I had my place, from all the experience and from visiting so many places, I feel like I could do a pretty good job, with setting up the property. 2 hours north of here, there's Flagstaff, which is, up in the high country, close to the Grand Canyon. Flagstaff is a place that I've been visiting for ever since I've been in Phoenix. Summer, perfect to get away from the heat, go up there, and it's a beautiful little town, a lot to do. And then in winter, love snowboarding, so would go up there a lot. They have a ski resort, so I would go up there, pretty much every winter. So that's kind of what started the idea of potentially getting a place up there, for me to be able to use and do a little side business with short-term rentals. After, I'm going to say, several months of looking, finally found a little place where we were able to make work.
We'll get into more details of how the financing worked out and how these investments are going, but I wanted to point out something I noticed when they were taking that first step. Regardless of their reasons, regardless of whether they pick long-term versus short-term rental, they were all open-minded to the possibility. They all accepted a challenge of doing something that they hadn't done before, and they shared this positive outlook of knowing that they can figure it out. Of course, they did their due diligence, they learned as much as they could, they ran their numbers and did their analyses, but they all acknowledged in one way or another that they didn't really know every single thing before they took that first step. There was some level of unknown, of uncertainty in the beginning, but still they took action one step at a time to get where they wanted to go. Moving on to part 3, let's talk about how they financed these investments. And speaking of money, you need to have a good business banking setup for your real estate investments. Whether you are looking to buy your first property or scaling your portfolio, Baselane is a banking and bookkeeping platform that is designed specifically for real estate investors and can grow with you. I love how the interface is clean, super beginner friendly. There are no monthly account maintenance fees and no minimum balances. This makes it so easy to separate personal and business accounts, which you absolutely need to do from the start. You can import transactions, track income and expenses, categorize everything for taxes, and even collect rent automatically for long-term rentals. It's all in one place, and it's one of those tools that helps you stay organized before things get messy. Right now, you can get a $100 bonus after making an eligible deposit. So check them out in the link in the pinned comment, and thank you to Baselane for sponsoring today's episode.
I bought the home in 2021. My interest rate was like 3.25. So I got a good deal there.
I found this deal while I was in college and I wasn't working a full-time job. I couldn't really get a conventional loan. So I went down the DSCR route, which I didn't know you could do for residential properties at first, but I was lucky enough to find a lender who would, and the only personal information I needed was a decent credit score, and everything that was just based on the performance of the property. So I lucked out with that.
Beyond the financing piece of this expensive purchase of this whole property, there are also other upfront startup costs like an appraisal or inspection or other closing fees related to buying a property. They also mentioned rehab or renovations, and in the case of short-term rentals, furnishing, in addition to any business or legal filing costs. These expenses are something you can totally plan for, and ideally something you work into your initial analysis, but nevertheless, they really add up, and that is really why I'm a huge fan of that free bookkeeping that Baselane offers. Part 4, now that you have heard their first deal, how are things going with that first investment and with their real estate journey in general?
So the cabin I purchased it in May of 2023. So this winter, it'll be coming up on 2 years. I did spend about 6 months renovating the cabin. Of course, a lot of money, a lot of time, a lot of effort to when you go live. Of course, you're so nervous. You're like, well, am I going to get bookings? Like, what's going to happen, right? But right off the bat, bookings started coming in. I think in the first 30 days, we were able to get over 30 reservations spread out through the couple months that I had opened it. So that was a huge boost of confidence. ever since then, we were able to start reaching, certain milestones with the cabin or with our listing, becoming a super host, and then jumping up into like a guest favorite, top 1% properties in the area, the little accolade that Airbnb gives, reaching pretty high occupancy rates. Haven't really had bad experiences. All of our guests have been honestly really, really cool, very considerate, super nice. Everyone loves it. So all of that just has turned into a really good experience and given me the motivation to maybe try and grow, a little bit more.
After this amazing success with his first listing, Andrew is actually planning to move into a new home and rent out his current property on Airbnb as well. And he's got some really great advice on designing your property based on what kinds of guests you're expecting.
Since I did a full renovation here, the place is in really good shape. And these last couple months, I've been pretty much getting it listing ready to go live pretty soon when I, move into this new place, a new property that I'm purchasing here in town. People, when they travel up to Flagstaff and to the cabin, it's more of like an experience. They're going up there for the experience, really. It's a very unique A-frame with like a big wall of windows just overlooking into a bunch of pines. So I get a ton of couples that go up there to have that cabin experience. The property down here, even though it's a really beautiful house with a pool and stuff, I feel like the type of guest that's going to come here, it's going to be tailored more towards comfort and convenience. It's probably going to be people that are visiting their kids that are in college, or maybe coming to spring training games, or they have like a wedding, for example. They want to find a place with either maybe a couple of friends or, their family. So that's been top of mind for me when I've been designing this property. Practicality, convenience, comfort. I will say short-term rental is very hands-on. So scaling a short-term rental portfolio while having a full-time job, I think it would be messing with the balance of having a good lifestyle and, having, good properties that you can stay on top of to really stay at like the top 1%. Especially if I'm managing them by myself, it would just be too much. Now, I think I'm kind of at that crossroads where, depending on how this goes, do I want to potentially scale more or shifting my strategy a little bit? So yeah, we'll see. I think this new property is going to help me determine that. So I'm kind of excited to see where it goes.
I really appreciated how grounded his view was whether or not to scale. And admittedly, I share some of those same thoughts. There are trade-offs to scaling, especially with how hands-on, like he said, Airbnb can be. And so it really depends on your goals, and everyone's going to go on a different journey. As for Jimmy, he's found that the long-term rental strategy of his initial property, the one with the ADU, to be a really good investment in an area that has high rental demand.
And as far as renting this out in an area where there is like a lot of people that need rent, it's been pretty fruitful for me, I think. I bought another property about 20 minutes away, probably the worst property in the neighborhood. I pretty much spent 8 to 9 months renovating it. I work for the city of LA and they have a credit union as well. So I used my credit union, just a primary loan around like 6%. So my strategy for that one is a live and flip. This property I've gained like $400,000 of equity, which has been like pretty crazy in my mind. My plan is to either sell it after 2 years to avoid some of the capital gains, or take a HELOC out and try to do it again with another property.
After that second property / giant rehab project, he's now on to his third thing, doing rental arbitrage when his girlfriend vacated her beachside condo. He considered short-term rentals, but the process around it was a little bit tricky.
The other way was just a midterm rent, and that overall experience has been really quite easy. We do Furnish Finder and Airbnb. We get like travel nurses or digital nomads, and they have generally kept the place like really clean. For now, I'm pretty happy with like getting like maybe 1 or 2 properties a year and just trying to do it. I would love to get like another buy and hold property or a fix and flip. My ideal scenario would be like a buy and hold, 4 or 5 properties paid off, and just like spending more time with the family, I think.
Honestly, that sounds great to me too. As for Brugh, he had just got his first property when we were chatting, so we'll have to check back with him on how things end up going. So far, he's been approaching everything with such a positive attitude. He's already learned a lot, and he's got a really big long-term goal.
The inspection kind of caught me off guard, and it was like a book of things that were wrong with the property. But then once you sort of look in it a little bit more, it's just a lot of paint chipped on a door, or this door isn't closing correctly. Just small things that are easy to fix. I'd say the end goal is operating small boutique hotels in really cool areas of the world. I want to live in Costa Rica for a few years. I think it'd be really cool to run a long-term rental, set up property management with that, and then maybe move into, midterm or short-term rental or Airbnb, and then sort of combine my hospitality skill set that I develop, and then eventually build up the capital, sell off all the rentals, and go all in on starting some sort of boutique hotel chain and setting it up for 2-3 years in one area, getting all the systems in process, and then moving somewhere else and just rinsing and repeating. It's kind of a lofty goal, but I think it'd be really cool to do.
Part 5, let's summarize the lessons we learned here. How did they know that they could? How did they get from 0 to 1? What helped them keep moving forward, especially in the beginning stages? I'll share what they said first, but I also have a few observations of my own based on the stories they told.
A lot of people say house hacking is probably the easiest and safest kind of way. And I think my real estate journey has been just a progression. Some of the people you see on bigger pockets, they really scale. They got 11 properties in 4 years. Mine was, I feel a little bit of progression. I bought a cosmetic fixer. I didn't have to do major stuff to it. So I took my time. I guess my motto has been if I mess up, then I can hire somebody. So I would at least try it once. It's been a great learning experience for me. And it gave me a lot of the courage to step up my construction game into the next projects that I have. I could advise somebody buy a fixer upper, live in it for 2 years and then do that again. That's a great way, I think, to get started as well. Just because I think if you bought a fixer-upper property, hired out a lot of the work and maybe did some of the work as yourself, you'll be able to gain a lot of equity that you could use on your next property, that you could either do that again or you could use it to buy maybe a nicer home, a dream home.
I think I could be a good host. I love to set up a space for people to have a good time or plan a trip or, recommend a good restaurant, things like that. That gave me the confidence in thinking that I could potentially have my own place and have it be a successful short-term rental. And then obviously doing a lot of research in the area, AirDNA and looking at comps to kind of further back that up and give me that confidence, seeing the amount of revenue that people were doing in the area. And I was wow, okay, so this is definitely feasible. And then that's when I decided to just go full on after that. Going in, having a good exit strategy. When I purchased a property, I was well, if I don't being a host, or it doesn't get booked, or my place gets trashed, okay, I probably have to sell. That was one of the things when I was searching for a property, was I wasn't trying to look for a place that was super remote in the middle of nowhere where it would probably be a little bit tougher to sell. So this was super close to town in a great neighborhood with great property values, things like that, that, also helped into my decision-making process.
I didn't really have a real estate finance background. I wasn't afraid to, admit to him hey, I'm new to this. I don't know what I'm talking about a lot of the time, most of the time. So can you please help me and walk me through this process? And I think finding a realtor that sort of worked as a mentor and a teacher as well is extremely helpful to me. Just joining a Cincinnati real estate investors Facebook club. You can anonymously ask questions. So I would just ask questions that were honestly so stupid, and I would be embarrassed to ask someone else. A big part of me was just getting over the fear of just being the least intelligent person in the room and not being afraid to just ask questions. On the outside, you're buying a house. It's daunting. It's a lot of money. But, if you get a good team on your side, which I luckily have, a helpful team, you get so much more confident. I mean, I've read the books and done the research online, but there's so many things that I think that just doing it will teach you. I'd say that's been the most valuable lesson for me so far.
If you're just starting out, or if you're considering whether real estate is the right move for you, I have 5 key takeaways that I heard them say / concluded from their stories. And before we dive into that, just a few quick housekeeping items. Number 1, I wanted to thank the guests for coming on again. I really appreciated how openly they were willing to share their stories, their tips, and their inspiration. I'll leave a link to them or their listing below. Please give them a shout out if you found something especially relatable or inspiring or helpful. There's even more that they shared. Let me know if you guys want the whole full-length interview posted somewhere. It is a little bit more niche, so I might post it as an unlisted or private video with a link just in the description perhaps. And on that note, number 2, This is a completely new format that I'm testing out. My thought was to borrow the wisdom from this awesome community, from other investors, but keep my structure to make it easy to follow, make it topic-based. So maybe next time we'll talk about whether someone scales or doesn't scale, exit or doesn't exit, what is the thought process behind that, or it might be crazy guest stories and what kind of systems people have put in place to run their business. Anyway, totally open to suggestions. I really just want this to be helpful to you. So let me know what you think. And then lastly, number 3, if you are interested and willing to share your story, I'm sure this community would really appreciate it. Send me an email. I'd love to chat, and you don't need to be some real estate guru at all. In fact, if you're thinking, who am I to say anything? You're exactly the person I want to talk to. All right, with that out of the way, back to the few key takeaways. The first obvious one is that there is not one path. You could start with a nearby-ish short-term rental that you purchase. You could start with a house hack, or you can jump straight to remote investing in a triplex for long-term rentals. Or in my case, test the waters in your backyard ADU that you already have. There's not one speed on how quickly you're supposed to scale, and there's not one goal where everyone is trading in their 4 little greenhouses for the one big hotel that is red. I think it's comforting to hear that if you choose to incorporate real estate as part of your investing journey, you can and are supposed to really customize it to what your risk tolerance is, what capital you start with, what your end goals are, and just personal preferences. There's always going to be people who are scaling super fast, and those stories tend to get more pub because it makes for a better thumbnail, a better title, and it's more dramatic, it's more fun. But if it doesn't apply to you, don't let that distract you or somehow diminish what you are doing. Number 2, I've noticed a very strong lean toward action. Yeah, they all ran their numbers and did their analyses, but they did something about it. I think the interesting thing is when I ask them, how did you actually do it? How did you get over a hump? How did you have the confidence to know you can? They all kind of pause, they thought about it, and they give me some logical answer like, oh yeah, I've traveled before and I've thought about other people's furnishings and I think I would do a good job as a host. Or they would be like, yeah, I've asked a lot of questions, I ran numbers, or it's because I have a good team, or I think it's because house hacking is the easiest option. And of course, all these things help, but ultimately, for them or for myself, there wasn't a magical checkbox that, once you check it off, you are now clear to take action. You kind of just decide to do something. I think it can be especially hard for people with a certain kind of perfectionistic tendency. Like, what if I didn't consider all the possibilities before starting? And if that's you and you do want to get into real estate, see if you can lower your initial action threshold to good enough, knowing your perfectionism isn't going to go away. It will carry you through to a process of continuous improvement. You will keep course correcting the whole time, and you're going to be fine. Either that or find a partner who leans stronger towards action. I may or may not be speaking from personal experience. The third common theme we can all learn from is that they didn't have all the answers. But A, they were aware of that. Nobody here was confidently incorrect. And B, they were resourceful. They reached out for help, they asked questions, and they were not afraid of sounding silly. They also had this optimistic belief that they can figure it out, and then also the practical follow through of actually figuring it out. Number 4 is something they didn't say. From the financing piece, they all use different loans, but notice how nobody said zero money down. In fact, beyond the financing itself, each of them had to spend additional money, either for an inspection or for a big reno project that took months and months. I know, especially on the internet, there are people using creative financing strategies, but overall, both from this conversation and just from people I know in real life, that is not the most common or realistic way to do it. For the most part, I would still consider real estate to be something that starts with upfront capital. And personally, not financial advice, if I literally had zero to start with, I might consider other kinds of investments first. Number 5, and this is the biggest one. If you've been finding real estate investing kind of daunting and not for you based on who you have observed in the space, I am here to report that A, you're not crazy. I'd say most people that I work with in the hospital are pretty well versed in personal finance and the basic retirement accounts and ETFs, but the majority of them are not into real estate or haven't considered it. And that's okay if it's intentional, but I also feel like sometimes the information just isn't out there, or it is out there but hides behind some bro with a yacht. And B, there are still plenty of great examples of folks like the ones you've met today who are not from a real estate or finance background, who are also super busy just like you that have found a way to make things work and have had a positive experience investing in real estate as a side quest. We exist. We are either less vocal or the stories are less headline worthy, so it is harder to hear those voices, but that is why I wanted to make this series. Real estate is not some magic bullet. It is not the only way to build wealth or freedom, but it can be a powerful piece to your puzzle if you're approaching it thoughtfully, stay curious, and adapt as your life or the world around you changes. I hope this was helpful. Thank you again, Baselane, for supporting the channel, and I will see you guys again next time. Bye!